Dr. Harrison. I'm the advisor for the Democracy Club, for those of you who may not know. And we have today Mr. Ray Brown, who retired recently after teaching in the public schools for 36 years. Was that in Lebanon mostly?
5 in Ohio, 31 in Eugene.
Wow. And he became alarmed some years ago, about 2005, about the erosion of personal liberties in the country. And he began to take action. Part of that action was that in the last few years, Ray has handed out over 6,000 copies of the Bill of Rights.
All right.
You might even have some with you
I
today.
do.
I thought
Yeah,
so.
right.
He has spoken to many organizations and schools. He's been to LBCC before, in costume, talking about the Declaration and the Constitution. And then, this last 4th of July, Ray, dressed in historical clothing, recited the Declaration of Independence by memory at Mount Rushmore.
Wow.
By memory. Outstanding. Of course, his most recent accomplishment, what an accomplishment, was his walk across America. He walked solo across America from June to December of last year. You pulled this the whole way, from what I could tell from your blog, and he talked to people and taught them about American history, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration. Some of your conversations I was reading about on the blog were really interesting. So let's give a hearty welcome to Mr. Ray Brown.
Thank you. And again, thank you for having me. And I tend to talk on a little bit, so I don't want this just to turn into a slideshow of my walk across the United States. I want to talk about some of the interesting experiences I had as well. But I would just like to back up and just give you a little bit more of a background about myself, like why am I here? What's going on? First of all, I have always loved American history. I was a different child. As a kid, I liked American history. I was interested in what we called cowboys and Indians in the Old West in those days, and I was an adopted child too. And I think when you're adopted and you're aware of that, you always look backwards where most kids are looking forward. The hard thing as a teacher of American history, especially at the high school and middle school level, is to get kids interested and to realize it's not about dead people, because every year they would come in and say, why do we have to learn about those dead people anyway? And it's not about dead people, it's about who we are. And you know, kids are very interested in the future. Kids want to drive, kids want to date, kids want to graduate, kids want to do all these things, go off to college, get married, whatever. And so for you as an educator or somebody who loves American history to try to get kids to look backwards, it's a real challenge. That's why you have, you know, grandma sitting there with the photo album looking at pictures and showing, trying to share with grandchildren. They're going, okay, already, all right, you know, it's boring. But what I've found is the closer one comes to becoming history, the more interested they are in it. So I've always loved American history. I've taught it in the public schools. And in around 2005, I became alarmed. I'll be honest, I'm a civil libertarian, okay? And a civil libertarian is not a bad thing. It's somebody who believes in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I was very alarmed in the nation's war on terrorism that I thought we were throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I came home one day, and this is a true story. My son was sitting there. He was home from college, had his feet up on the coffee table, and I'd come this long day of work. And there was something on the news. And I started, I'll say, teeing off on that. I was just grinding. I went on for probably 5 minutes. And when I was all finished, my son looked at me seriously and said, what are you going to do about it? And I laughed, my response was, oh, have a beer. And we laughed at that. Then my response to what was on the news was I was going to have a beer. Well, I don't care whether it's having a beer or a cup of coffee or a soda or working in your garage or kicking a dog or something. We all react to things, but I thought, well, what can I do about it? I've often taught the kids that together we can make a great difference. By yourself, sometimes it seems like, you know, what can I do? And that's the quandary I was in. But if enough people join together, we could go out here and lift a car off the ground. Honest to goodness, I promise you that would be the case. We could go out there, stick some metal rods under that. We have enough students say, okay, everybody, heave ho, right? You lift that thing right off the ground. So I really do believe in the power of numbers, but what about me as an individual? I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I happen to know something about history, so I actually ran into a person who's involved with the muzzle loaders. And the lady was actually in Albany, and she made me an outfit. I had to wait a year for it. And so in that meantime, I decided to kind of hone up on some of my knowledge and things so that when I went out and hit the streets, I would know a little bit of what I was talking about. And finally, the day was 2006, July 4th. And I was in Eugene at Alton Baker Park there. There was a big festival. And I was about to step out in my outfit for the first time. I have a couple of these outfits now, but at that time I was very concerned. I had her go out and I said, look for the neighbors. Are the neighbors outside? She went out and looked, okay, no neighbors. I didn't want to think I was weird, you know. They didn't know anything about what I was about to do, and I didn't know either at that time. But I said, not good enough. Any cars in the street? She says, no cars are in the street. Okay, cool. Let's go. I says, that's not good enough. I says, go unlock the door. We have our car in the driveway, you know. So she unlocked the door, and I ran out there, and I slid into the passenger side, and instantly did one of those low rider kind of numbers, where you just have your head above the window. You know, I didn't want anybody to see me in this outfit. That's how nervous I was. But we went down to Alton Baker Park, and she said, okay, you know, you got to do it. It's D-Day now. And I, armed with a stack of the Bill of Rights, I just took a deep breath. I thought, at least it's the 4th of July, not December. And I stepped out, and I went up to the entrance, and I just very gingerly, very tentatively, I started passing out copies of the Bill of Rights. I put them on old-style paper so that they had that little bit of a parchment look, because we all get so many handouts that I didn't want somebody just to throw it away. And the positive response I got was overwhelming. And the nice thing about what I'm doing, I walked across the United States, as you know, and no matter who I ran into, everybody was 100% supportive. I ran into the Tea Party people, which people sometimes confuse me by visual association. Oh, you're a Tea Party guy. I'm not. I have no political affiliation when I'm doing this sort of thing, okay? So I would talk to a Tea Party person in Illinois, and they say, oh, we want you to hang around. We're having a big convention in 2 days. We would love to have you speak. So I can't, got to keep moving. I talked to my wife, said, you couldn't talk to a Tea Party convention. I said, yes, I could. She says, what? How could you, whatever? I said, because the message I would say to the Tea Party people is the same message I would say to the Democrats or to the Republicans or the Independents. Because what my message is that I believe that we as a nation need to look at our history, need to look at the principles and ideals upon which we were founded. And of the many things, the one that's most important to me is what I call people sovereignty. The idea that people rule in this country. You know, the beginning of the preamble says, we the people. The very last 3 words in the Bill of Rights says, to the people. Lincoln talked government of the people, by the people, for the people. So our history books and documents are full of this kind of stuff, and I really feel that if people knew more about American history, we wouldn't be so quick to give things up. Because I look at freedoms like hairs on your head. You know, I'm pretty good at losing these hairs, but I tell the kids, I talk to high school kids and middle schoolers a lot, you know, you have some kid in front of you, there's a hair sticking out, maybe they're half asleep, you pull one out, kid wakes up, hey, what was that? Oh, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. Okay, kid puts his head down a little bit later, there goes another one. And that's how our freedoms are lost, in my opinion. Slow and steady erosion here. Okay? And if somebody grabbed a whole handful of your hair at once and tried to yank, well, you'd fight for that. But the way it's lost is one hair at a time. You know, I often say, sometimes am I making progress in this and that? I always tell my wife, look back at where we've come from. Well, I would say if you brought somebody back from the grave, maybe your great-great-grandfather, and you told them some of the things that we're putting up with today, they'd say, what? We would have never put up with that. You know, kids do this all the time. I tell them dress codes and things when I was a kid in school. Oh, we'd never put up with that. Well, yeah, you would. And so I really believe that the very first thing we need to do is have an inventory. You know, if you're a rich person, I come to your house, you have so much stuff, you don't even know what's in there. I can load my pockets up and walk out, and you don't even know anything's gone. So take an inventory. And so this is why I think education is very important. So I want you to know that one of the things I do, as Robert mentioned, was I do recite the Declaration of Independence from memory. I have Patrick Henry's speech memorized, which is it's just about just as long as the Declaration of Independence. Some of the Thomas Paine stuff, things like that. I really like this sort of thing. And that day in 2006, when I was in Eugene, as the day went on, my courage was bolstered. And I went up in between bands. I was hoping that I might be able to recite the Declaration of Independence. They told me no. They thought it might be political or something like this. They didn't know anything about me. You know, it's like, it's the Declaration of Independence. It's like the 4th of July. So I was rejected that day. I want you to know that. But, you know, it's not so much what happens to us, but our reactions to it. I've learned to take that stuff and let it slough off a little bit, okay? And so the next year I was at Harrisburg, okay, little town just north of Eugene there, you know, kind of south, or north of Junction City. But I went from Harrisburg to Lebanon, Oregon. In fact, I think that's how we got connected. There was a student at Lebanon one 4th of July that was in a class of yours. So anyway, I went from that, and I want you to know, as he said last year, I was at Mount Rushmore for the National Park Service. And the response I get from people is overwhelming. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a you can do it sort of thing, but I would if I was dealing with middle or high school kids here. That I want you to know, think about this. I was afraid to step out of my house. And last year, I was at Mount Rushmore. And I'll tell you, that was it was a high for me. Okay, it wasn't as high as this, but it was a high. And so I tell students, never underestimate the future. Now my goal next year is to be at Washington, D.C. And you have to be persistent. So anyway, so that's where I am. I try to be non-political. You know, we have people with different political persuasions here. And I'm telling you, I collected over $1,000 between Florence, Oregon and Atlantic City. And I didn't ask for a single penny. Because people would see the card. I have 2 little flags. I didn't get it set up. I have 2 little American flags. You'll see it in the pictures here. And people would stop. God bless you. Thank you. I did not get one negative experience. Before I took off, I'm also a black belt martial artist. I've been a lifetime martial artist. I still participate. My martial arts instructor said, take a gun for safety. I don't want to take a gun. I want to shoot somebody. They can rob me. I'm not going to shoot someone. And my kids were worried. I have 2 children in their 20s, so I did take some pepper spray. That was my compromise. I only had to use it once. It was on a dog in Idaho. Okay, the dogs were the big problems, not people. So, and police. Sometimes there are little bits of problems, but you know, you got to go with the flow. So, I retired in June of 2010 after 36 years. People think I look a little young. I started teaching at 21. And I love it, and I'm a physical fitness person. And I always wondered, could I walk from coast to coast? Could I walk every step from the from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean? I got teased. People did the Forrest Gump thing and all that sort of stuff, you know. They snicker. But just like when I walk in here dressed like this, some people snicker. You think this bad, you should see middle schoolers. Hey, you just learn to deal with that stuff. I asked my wife, and she cried. That was her response. She's an elementary school principal, and she's still working, and she said, you only think of yourself. Well, the hook was set. You know, so I just put it on drag and let it run. That's okay. I won't follow my dream. I'll just hang around the house, you know, whatever. Well, I let it go, and eventually she relented in 2 things. One, she said that she had to be able to visit me a couple of times, and the other one was I had to be home by Christmas. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was going to be home by Christmas or not, but I told her I would, because once you're out there, it's like, I'm not done yet. And I forget what the other thing I said was. Anyway, there was 2 things. And, I know, she had to meet me. And she wanted to know where I was going to be for Labor Day. Now, this is probably in March. Okay, I'm still finishing my school year. Where am I going to be Labor Day? I don't know. So you look. And you see other people have done this stuff, and people average about 20 miles a day. And I did some quick math, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I said, okay, maybe Denver, rent a car and drive up and find me, or maybe Casper, Wyoming. Yeah, Casper, Wyoming, that's a good place. Well, I ended up having to slow down because I was going much more than 20 miles a day. And so I ended up taking a detour. If you look, I don't know if you can see this from where you are,